Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today. We are delighted to have with us Mr. Harsh Mariwala. Mr. Harsh Mariwala leads Marico Ltd as its chairman. Over the last 3 decades, he has transformed a traditional commodity-driven business into a leading consumer products company in the beauty and wellness space. He was recently bestowed the EY Entrepreneur of the Year Award 2020 for India, which is the world's most prestigious business award for entrepreneurs. Mr. Mariwala's recent book, Harsh Realities, The Making of Marico, hit the stands on 30th July. This book encapsulates his journey, the challenges he has faced, the risks he took, and the learnings from not only his successes, but more importantly, his failures. I've gone through the book and I recommend everybody else in this audience also does so. I have personally seen Marico transform from a family-owned business to a very successful, professionally run organization. And we hope that today we will gain some insights and learnings for all the entrepreneurs who are watching. Thanks, Mr. Mariwala, for joining us today.
Thank you, Punita, my pleasure.
My first question to you is, at what stage in a family-owned business should ownership be clearly separated, whether it is the siblings or cousins, extended family, or even from parents?
I think it's a tough question because normally there is a very close intertwining of ownership and management. And I wish there was the right answer. A lot depends on the kind of business you are in. There are some businesses where the family's active involvement can be very crucial. And businesses like something like a trading where you have to take frequently, you have to take some calls in terms of investing or foreign exchange or whatever else, where the family member has the authority and also is equipped to take that risk. I think in those businesses, it is better that the family manages and owns the company. It so happened that in India, most of the time, or all the time I've seen, it's the family and ownership is never segregated. It's always there. And in my case, my old journey, I decided to step down as managing director. And I'm now, I call myself as an active strategic investor, where I don't have a say in day-to-day running of the company. I get involved, but my time involvement is only 20% of the time available. And there's a clear role definition between me and the managing director. And on a day-to-day basis, I don't get any phone calls for my approval. We have laid down our way of working, which involves that I have to add value rather than control things. So I'm on top of things what are happening in the company by getting monthly reports and interacting with the management team once a month for a few hours. But beyond that, my role is more at a influencing stage where I have to influence others to improve performance by having conversations with leadership teams, everybody conversations, then meeting relevant hires at very senior levels, talking publicly. I don't do investor relations. That gets done by the managing director. So I think I have been able to do that, but I've seen that there are very few Indian organizations which have really been able to segregate ownership from management.
But you've actually done 2 transitions. One was separating out the family interests. When I was reading your book, I guess the company started with many branches of the family, entangled in a host of different businesses together. Yeah. And you set out to separate out the ownership.
Yes.
And only after maybe 3 decades or 2 decades did you actually do the second transition, which was from a a family-run business to a professionally run. So, so from the learnings that you've had, I guess the first step you would recommend is that people separate out the extended family ownerships into cleaner sections, or is that not as relevant? What is more important, I guess? Is it the professionally run bit, or is it separating the family ownership interests?
So I just one correction, Punita, in my own journey. First stage was actually not separating ownership. The first stage was actually separating management and giving accountability to each family members to manage a company at the top. Normally, what happens in most family managed companies is that many family members are involved in day-to-day running of the organization, and that leads to a lot of confusion. The role clarity is not there among the family members. It is difficult to attract talent when good talent sees that so many family members are in management positions. It could lead to dual reporting. So I established my business in my initial years in Bombay Oil Industries, which had my father, my uncles, and I was the first person from the next generation to join the business. And for 20 years, I was part of that company. But at some stage, I realized that, being a part of a larger family managed organization, and by then 4 of my cousins had joined business, was actually not helping me at all because I was not able to attract talent. There was no clear policy for allocation of capital between different profit centers. And there were conflicts in terms of, there were no synergies also in the businesses. So I spent about 2 to 3 years advocating internally within the family that let's demerge Bombay Oil into 4 different businesses, which was, and then let each family member, a youngster, take it over as the CEO, managing director. So that was my first set of transition. And it was not ownership shift. It was the ownership was similar. So when Marico was formed, the ownership was same in 4 parts. That is my father and 3 of his brothers, But it so happened that over a period of 4 or 5 years, we had some differences of opinion, which led to a split in ownership also, wherein I had to buy over two families' interests. And from 1994, 95 onwards, just me and one of my uncles have ownership. So I think that has been the way it has worked out. But the key thing is, it's very important to deal with a lot of patience. Family issues can actually be very complex because you are just not related to each other. You are also competing within the organization in terms of roles you are playing. So you are playing multiple roles as promoter, manager, and also different generations between me and my father or my uncle. The openness is not there. So there is a lot of complexity gets added because of these complex role relationships. And I was able to do that by having this split of businesses under different companies, accountable to family, but giving me a lot of freedom in terms of managing my business. If I did well, then I had the freedom to allocate money to my business, and it would not go to some other family part of the business. So that was a big liberating moment for me. And it took me 2 to 3 years, but looking back, it has been the most important decision for me. If I had not done that properly, I would have been fighting family battles, because you've seen it in many families that once they start fighting, it's sometimes never ending. And the impact is maximum on the business and frustrations with the family. So my advice to those who are a part of a larger family arrangement is that, you have to have a lot of patience. You have to build consensus, and ideally speaking, you should get hold of somebody who the family trusts, an external person, but the whole family has to trust, and then arrive at what is the way forward. Now, your second question is, when should the ownership within the family get divided? Again, there is no right answer. If things work out, you can be joint owners, but more important is clarity in terms of the roles and no overlap in terms of dual reporting. And it could be that 3 or 4 families are owners, but as long as they and each one can manage a different business, and it can coexist. A lot depends on the family itself, and the kind of business you are in. But I'm of the opinion that too many family members adds to complexity. There have been cases where a few members have been able to coexist and coexist well. So to sum up, there is no right answer, but family issues are very, very crucial. And each family member or each of the person who is listening to this conversation have to take this seriously, because it is not as easy as just dividing responsibility. There are a lot of egos involved, and so it's very complex, but you have to go in depth and try and resolve those issues.
Right. I was actually surprised when I was reading a book that 70% of the world's businesses are family owned.
Yes.
We often only see the professionally run ones, especially as investors in the listed space.
Yeah.
But why is it that very few family-owned businesses have made this transition successfully? What did you do that others have not been able to?
I don't know why they have not been able to move, but maybe they have not realized the need. For me, it was very important to attract talent. For the kind of business I'm in, which is packaged goods or fast-moving consumer goods, talent has played a very, very important role because I converted the whole business from unbranded to branded without any capital investment by just sheer distribution and marketing inputs and new product development. And whenever I've improved the quality of talent, it has paid me rich dividends. So I was very keen that I had to attract best quality talent. And if I was not able to do that, I would not be able to grow. Because in this business, it is the quality of talent, and you've seen it in FMCG employ the best quality managers and the most demanded managers. And we also pay them very, very well. So, and my target in terms of attracting talent brought companies like Levers or Procter & Gamble or L'Oreal or any other Indian well-managed FMCG company. So to make that happen, one had to take those calls and take those decisions in terms of giving me independence. And since that day, I have not treated this company as a family managed organization. I've given all the signals to the external market that this is a professional organization and only merits will play an important role. Only merits will work. If you have somebody else, you tell me to employ your friend or whatever, I will at the most ask my team to evaluate, but the ultimate decision is the team decision. And it's very important to have very high standards of governance in a family managed organization because good managers, they don't want to dirty their hands. They don't want to take shortcuts. And not only forget about good managers, but good associates, good employees these days, they are looking at ESG, and you've seen in so many boards that ESG has become the hot topic in all the boards. It started with governance, but after the pandemic, now it's expanded to ESG, which is a very good development. And I think organizations have to take into account all these issues because it appeals to all the stakeholders, and all the stakeholders are demanding this. And even consumers are looking at ESG journey in terms of what is the packaging or whatever else you're doing, which is adding something negative to the environment. So I think if you have to turn the company into a professional company, you have to have very high standards of ESG, meritocracy, and influence will not work, and then attract the best quality talent.
Now, in some sectors, especially say technology, where you need the founder itself to be very involved in the company because they really clearly have the innovative mindset, and they have either the IP or the algorithm or the passion to build the company. And we are seeing a lot of tech startups in India that start off by professionals who eventually they will become a family-owned business. So in a sector like technology or say in pharmaceuticals, where we see quite a bit of family ownership
Yes.
or the founder ownership rather.
Yes.
How do you separate out the involvement of the founder who's so key to driving the company?
So I think the key thing is for the founder to realize that this is not his own company, his or her own company. So it may be a publicly quoted company. The fact that many founders, unfortunately promoters, think that because they are the promoters, because they have a majority shareholding, they are entitled to treat that company as their own company. It is not their company. I mean, you are the majority shareholder, but you have other external shareholders. So the organization's interests come first, Whatever you're doing, whatever decisions you're making, the organization's interests come first, which means that you're accountable to the external board of directors. And the board of directors will take a call, how good are you as a CEO? Or if you have any other family member who is in a senior position, are they effective? If they're not effective, then it is not in the interest of the company. So it's very important that an independent body like board of directors takes calls on that. And the starting point is the mindset of the promoters. Unfortunately, in India, people say that this is my company, just because one is promoted. If it is a private company, I understand. But it is a publicly listed company. You are not the owner of the company, You have only 50-60% shareholding, which is not right for you to say that I will do whatever I feel like doing because it is my company. It is not your company.
But even private companies, you have external stakeholders, venture capitalists, private
Yes, so yeah, sure. As long as the shareholding is diluted to others and not fully held by by the family, it has other stakeholders,
But if the founder is the one who's driving the vision and has the technology or the expertise in that setup or that the company is operating in, is it necessary that you should still professionalize it and not have the founder as involved?
No, not really. I mean, if the founder is able to add value, all I'm saying is you segregate your ownership from management. You have to treat yourself as as a managing director, but don't make yourself the owner. The problem comes in when the managing director who's a family member thinks that he is the owner and the ownership interests overtake the organization's interest. That's not sound. So you have to segregate the two in your minds, and you have to be independent. You have to behave like a manager, as if you are equally accountable to the board in whatever you're doing. And if you're able to add value, why not continue? There's no harm in continuing. But the mindset you have has to be a mindset of, okay, I'm a part owner, I'm accountable to the board, and my role is as managing director and not as owner. Yeah. So you're right. In India, the normal tendency in the Indian society is to be hierarchical, and automatically it's thought that the son will follow the father. But is it good for the company? It could be good for the company. I'm not saying it is always bad for the company. The son may have some other interests. I mean, is it worth pushing your children to do something which they are not fond of? Or the son may not be ready, and it's time for you to step down because you've reached a certain age. So you have to take interests which are good for the organization rather than what is good for you. And again, I'm going back to that thing that, you have to treat yourself not like an owner, because you're not the owner. The board takes a call on all this. And in this case, also the board was instrumental in taking a call on this. And of course, at a social level, it is difficult. But I think looking back, it has been a good decision because it has resulted in substantial shareholder value creation. And it has also given me a lot of opportunity to do new things, which I would never have been able to do so. And number three, it has given a very strong signal in the capital markets that this organization is progressing in the right way. And in future, there won't be any succession planning issues. And even if this person who's been there as a managing director for the last 6 years, and once his term expires, then again, the board will decide what is good and not me as a promoter. And to that extent, it is my duty to have a board which is an independent board, which is very capable, which is also involved in basically judging human interactions, human management team. So that managerial judgment is a very important part of board deliberations. And the board also interacts a lot with managers. And when it comes to succession planning, either to promote somebody from internal or external, and committees like nominations, remuneration committee, they continuously go on evaluating what is the internal talent pool. How can we have a robust succession pipeline, not only for the MD, but one level lower also.
Small entrepreneurial family-owned businesses who don't really have strong boards, how do they accomplish this culture of innovation and all the things you've mentioned?
So I think the key thing in culture building is to decide what values are critical for you to succeed, or they will play an important role in driving your organization's journey. And I think very clear for me, innovation was the prime value which I was trying to build, because innovation had played a very important role in my own journey prior to starting Marico. So I built a culture which would turn us into a perpetual innovation engine. And what drives innovation within an organization? One is the quality of talent. Second is diversity of talent. Number three, how empowering are people in terms of their own roles? Number four, is there a fear of failure? Number five, is there experimentation? Number six, what is the role of top management in terms of treating failures? What is the role of top management in terms of facilitating innovation? Are there innovation champions? So we have built an organization which is a very flat structure, which empowers people, very good quality talent by recruiting management trainees every year from 8 schools of management, give them a lot of empowerment to ensure. So the flat structure ensures high degree of empowerment. The role of top management is to go on asking for innovation, experimentation, remove the fear of failure, encourage prototyping, have innovation facilitators, have innovation awards internally within the organization. So innovation will flourish in an organization which has these values. And depending on the kind of business one is, and you have to identify what values are very, very crucial, which will help the organization succeed. And then try and find out how do you reinforce these values on a perpetual basis. It could be safety, it could be service level, depending on the kind of business you are in. But then you have to think deep in terms of, if these are your values, how do you ensure that you encourage those values and encourage people to exhibit those values. And the role of top management is very, very crucial in culture building, because the top 2-3 layers of management, they don't take this subject seriously. It will not filter down the line. So it's very important to basically to arrive at a consensus with the top management and go on enculturizing the talent which comes in from outside to a culture. And to me, a culture is a source of competitive advantage. But it is a lot of hard work. It cannot be done within a few months or 1 or 2 meetings. It has taken me 3 to 5 years to build a culture, and it's just normal. And the key challenge then is to how do you maintain that culture as you grow, as old people leave, you acquire some new facilities, you start new businesses, you enter new countries. So it's a continuous thing which the HR function has to work on.
I mean, you've split the role of chair and CEO in your own company and have put together a very strong board.
Yeah.
And how difficult was it for you? I was reading a book, and it seemed it was quite difficult for you initially and your family when you decided to give up active day-to-day management and move into a chair position. So why is it that even though our regulators have mandated the split from chair and CEO, I mean, families are finding it so hard to do that?
Because I think there is a reluctance in terms of what will happen to the company if I give up control. There is a belief that I'm the best person to manage the company. And I don't think anybody can say that I'm the best person. No, there'll always be somebody else. You have to find that person who could occupy your shoes. Because even if you're the best person, you're not going to live forever. You will be operational for whatever number of years you're active. And the whole system has to be strong and not just you. So if the entrepreneur thinks that he knows it all, if the entrepreneur is not willing to delegate, if the entrepreneur is not willing to invest in other talent which can take over from him, then it will be very difficult to segregate the roles. But if the entrepreneur has a mindset that, okay, I have to delegate, I have to empower others, I have to make myself redundant and select talent which is better than me, then there's no issue at all.
Right. So, I mean, I think we have a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience today, and some are larger than others. So I guess it depends on what stage of your company you're at. And
you're right. So I did that when I was 63. So you're right, absolutely right. So I was active in the company as managing director for almost how many years? 20 years or so.
Yeah. So it's not a recipe necessarily for success very early on. I guess you have to build the company and bring it to an equilibrium where
I mean, if you are good at your job, then you can continue for a longer period. I'm not saying that you should immediately do it, but every 5-10 years you have to ask yourself, what is my role and what it should be. And the role also goes on shifting, because in my earlier days, when you're small, you're doing things on your own. A lot of things come to you on a daily basis for decision making. And then when you become larger, then the whole shift happens to actually recruiting good talent and team building and processes and things like that. And when you're very large, you are influencing others. So I think you have to go on asking, what is my current role which I can empower others to do? Though you may be the same managing director, but as the business is expanded, you have to go on relinquish some parts of your role, because otherwise, to what extent will you go on working all the time, And I think the organization also has to become far more stronger, and separately, to attract talent, they need a new challenge. They can't, their businesses or their roles have to expand. And that can come if you start relooking at your own role and start delegating. I'm not saying abdicating responsibility, delegate, which means you are accountable for delegation. You have to delegate to somebody who's capable, and that you should be confident that the person should be able to manage. So ultimately you are accountable for the delegation also, and you can't say that because I delegated I failed and then don't hold me accountable.
I mean, we've talked about obviously the benefits of A, separating out family ownership, B, having professional managers, and C, having a strong board. But what are you losing? Are you losing anything by separating out family ownership? Are you losing anything by professionalizing and stepping a little bit away from day-to-day management?
So a lot will depend again on the kind of business you are in and at what stage are you. So the initial stages, these things, as long as things are working out well in the family, one should start concentrating on how is the business growing. I think growth is very important in any business. So don't try to have structure because I am doing it, because I did it at a certain stage in my life after the business had grown and it had become large and a public limited company. It was being demanded by the external shareholders. So a lot depends on at what stage are you, the kind of business you are in. And I think that's a call will depend on each business and each family. So there is, again, no right answer for that.
Many of the entrepreneurs here, obviously, I'm sure are keen to know at what point do they start putting very professionally strong boards who are quite independent. And it's hard to attract talent when you're a smaller company. What advice would you have for them?
So I think if you're a non-listed company, it's easier. Then it's better to have an advisory board rather than a statutory board, because there is a reluctance to join statutory board. It's risky. So it's better to have a small advisory board. I think the key thing is to identify what are the competencies required at the board. And many times you just say that, okay, let me have this person, without realizing where he can add value. The starting point is within your own business, what competencies are required. For example, if your business is turning digital, and all the businesses are turning digital input. So say, okay, I want somebody to help me in my digital journey. And similarly, you may have somebody on innovation or somebody on culture or HR or finance. So you need to be clear what is the role of either the statutory board of directors or a board of advisors, and have a competencies for each position, and then look at what are the options available. So if I want somebody in capital markets, okay, I can look at Punita, I can look at X, Y, Z, and then decide who is the best for me. So the key thing is what are the competencies required at that advisory or statutory board, and then fill them up after looking at options available. Most of the time, most promoters look at individual and not really competencies, which is not the right way to go forward. So a lot will depend on what value addition can get from these areas where you may not be good at, or the person whom you're recruiting as advisor is much better than what internal talent pool can do, or they can act as a sounding board in terms of how the journey should be,
So what have been the toughest things that you've had to deal with? And what are the biggest learnings you've had from those tough things? Because I'm sure a lot of people here would like to know, learn from your mistakes, learn from your experiences.
I think the key thing, mistake is something which, failures. And I have had multiple failures. And if you read my book, which is Harsh Realities, it's a pun on my name.
Yeah,
and I must have covered, I must have covered at least 8-10 big failures in my journey. And but the key thing was, okay, out of each failure, there's a learning. And there is saying, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. And I say, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn, not lose. I think this is the book which is just got published on 30th of July. It's co-authored by renowned management guru, Professor Ramcharan. And the book is in a story format. It's very light reading. It can appeal to any person, whether it's student or entrepreneur's spouse or a professional. And there are lots of take-home values at the end of each chapter. It's very light reading. It's entertaining. And wherever I've given a book, people have said that they've been able to finish it off in one sitting, or they were awake until late. So my personal advice to all the listeners would be that I'm not trying to market myself, so don't misunderstand. My whole objective in promoting this book is to disseminate my learnings, To me, financially, it's a big drain on me in terms of the book production, whatever I've done. But I want more and more people to get benefit out of my own journey. And that's why I wrote the book. All I can assure you is I can guarantee that there'll be some take-home learning for whoever reads this book in your personal journey, in your business journey. So I think that's where I come from.
No, I totally agree. I've read your book, and it's very fascinating. It's very engaging with really, a lot of real life examples that people can leverage those experiences. Well, there are a lot of takeaways from our discussion today, but I think given that there are so many different size firms in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, each one will have to carve its own path, but at some point or the other, as they grow, they will need to professionalize more to attract talent, delegate more, build a professional board. So I wanted to thank you so much on behalf of EO, Incred, and all the audience for taking the time to do this.
Thank you, Punita. My pleasure to talk to you. Great session, and all the best to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.